Hello. Just get that out the door. Close this. And here we are. Just the two of us to begin with. Yes. Can you hear me now? I cannot hear you. We have Raphael's TV and Raphael, both his TV and himself.
Yes, it is.
Oh, that sounds, I could hear something there.
Hello, Freud.
Hello. Just opening our email. 1 second. We do expect a few other people. Yeah, here we go. Ginter's joining us. That's always good.
Hello.
Well, Valentina, long time no see. Valentina's working with this very difficult startup guy. A bit of a challenge. But anyway. Right. So yeah, I guess people will be sauntering in at some point. But today is really just about two things for the book. One is, who should we invite that we ourselves know and can interview? And two, how can we market the book? We need to get a bit more word out there. I just updated the Kindle and PDF versions with some further proofreading. So that's a good thing. Proofreading is expensive, so it's taken a while. So, you know, we're in a good place to spread the word for the second one.
Just a thought. Sorry.
No, please.
No, I didn't want to interrupt you. I'm sorry.
I was finished. I was just going to ask if, is it Alain? How do you pronounce it?
Alain in French.
Oh, okay. I won't be able to say that correctly. Like my Norwegian name, Frode. So you and me are a bit difficult, aren't we?
You just say Alan in English version.
Okay. I was just thinking, after Günther comes with his comment, if you can introduce yourself to the group, that would be really nice.
Sure. I started now. Would you prefer to I wait a little bit?
Well,
okay
what was the country you wanted to say? Sorry.
I'm living in Belgium,
yeah.
and we've started a business in the document management a few years ago. But 30 years ago, I've created a program software called Marco Polo. It's a document management, but with all the interface of the Macintosh. We are now reintroducing a new application. We are focusing on a new tool for page management, content management, library, PKM, and PKM, and also graph database. We are just looking what could be, let's say, the new age of the document, not just a full one-way page like we have created with Word since a long time, but giving value to the page. And thus the idea is to release a first version end of this quarter, and thus making an alpha version to select people. And your job and your focus on page and text and value of the text is really valuable. I've discovered you about 1 month ago, 2 months ago maximum. I learned a lot from you and from your first book. And I'm sure I can also provide some experience and perhaps help you to give you some advice, because I have a background also in selling software, selling applications, selling retail environment. And I have some hints perhaps for you to promote your second book and probably also the first one along with the second one. My idea is to contribute, but also to listen and learn from you. It's a sharing situation, and but I love the context. I love the idea to give augment value to text, and also to document that we play with every day. Sorry for my English. I try to do my best for that, but the idea is to share with real value.
Yeah, thank you for that introduction. As you know, I'm very, very glad you're in the community. I'm just pasting a link in the chat here. We have a little web community now. If you'd like to join there, and that would be great.
I'm in.
Oh, you are there. Fantastic.
Yes.
So one thing I don't remember from our earlier discussion, did I actually invite you to contribute to the book? I hope I did. If not, I apologize and would like to do that now.
No, you have to. But my concern is to write in good English, and also to add some value to what you have already done. Just now have to read most of your first book, and also to try to get to give value to the second one. But if I have time and if I have real good content, I will do. It will be my pleasure, because I think what we will release in a few weeks will be really valuable for this market, and also enhance the idea of what can be done with the text, and also make the creator of documents even better than what they have with the tools today.
That brings up a good point. And hi, John and Chris. Alain was just introducing himself, and you know, you made the polite thing about making it appear well in English, but if it might be fun, what do you guys think, if the entry was in French but had at least a summary in English? Why should the book only be English?
If you give value to a link to someone to translate a version done in let's say in another language, make it your page link to the translator, and make the people working, perhaps writing in their native language would be nice. And having, let's say, a kind of translation, dynamic translation with tools that you have or that exist in the market. But yes, why not?
That sounds like an interesting discussion for our open office hours, which is Mondays and Fridays. We'll look into interesting ways to expand the nature of the book. There are so few people here, but it's nice that you're here. I mean, John's kind of new, you're kind of new, but Peter's here. Peter's not new, which is good. Just wondering where everyone is, because quite a few people said they would be here.
I'm here, but I can't get video to work. It doesn't.
Hang on a second. Vint is saying he can't log in. So let me just copy invite link again. Please try this. Okay. Sorry, what was that? Who was speaking?
That was me, Peter.
Oh, hello, Peter.
Hi, how are you? Video appears to be completely broken on this. The start video button has got a red stripe through it, and no amount of clicking is going to produce a video. So
it's probably better anyway to have.
Oh, text. I'm sure it is. Yeah,
you're representing text by having your name there, so that's not a bad thing.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, I'm sorry for my absence from discussions. I was dragged into hospital for a triple bypass a month ago.
Oh.
So I'm fine. I'm recovering, but I've basically been off the planet for the last month. So.
But you are doing okay.
I'm doing fine. Thank you very much. Yes.
Yeah, that's very good. There's been a lot of that. John, you're quite new to the group. Do you feel comfortable doing a little introduction for everybody? Where are you coming from? Where?
Sure. I'm coming from Michigan. I'm coming from the journalism field. I am very interested, as I wrote in a little blurb on the site. I'm interested in the evolution of text as a verb, and the sort of verb dimension of texting, and how the sort of brevity of texting is oddly matched with a kind of overwhelming level of detail in the reactions to texts of one kind or another. And that has to do with a lot of different kinds of things. I make some comparisons. I'm very interested in this project. Esther Dyson introduced me to what you're doing. I actually, I'm a journalist who had a fairly decent career, and in the course of some of the controversies that have been moving through our culture right now, I actually, sort of lost my career and everything because of text and texting as a verb. So it might be interesting to address that in a piece for the book, but my personal story is not terribly interesting, but I do think that this idea of texting and its almost tribal nature is of interest. And of course, I'm very interested in all of what you are doing. And finally, to the point of a piece in different language, I mean, I think there should be all kinds of languages represented in this book, if possible, and especially the very interesting issue of translation itself should be represented somehow. That's just my view.
Agree on all points. And yes, if you want to write a piece on that, that would be great. If you can please, just email me a sentence or two, because I will list both you and Alan on the site where we're listing the new contributors. So we do have enough now. We're going to have a second volume, not a second edition. And soon I will be emailing the current people to ask if anybody wants to do a second piece, if they have something significantly new to contribute. So that's all very interesting. Hey, Peter.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Good morning.
Peter.
Other one. Oh, okay.
The other one who just entered. Yes.
The other Peter. Hi there.
Yes.
Good morning, other Peter. Good morning, everyone else.
I wonder what's going on. Did you guys have problems logging in, or was it just straightforward?
It was pretty straightforward for me.
Very odd, because Vint is saying that he's being said, he has to do this, that, and the other, and it's not working for him. So I'm wondering if that's the problem for anyone else. So,
well, Zoom had me update Zoom. Maybe that's a factor for him.
Yeah, maybe. But okay, well, let's talk about the issue of interviews. And John, you may be at the forefront of thinking about who we might interview. The reason we've thought about the idea of interviews is we'd like a wider range of perspectives for this second book, calling it a second look, than the people like us who are interested enough to write the piece. I particularly want politicians and people who have an impact on the world, but have a very different way of looking at the world. And maybe instead of them writing, we interview them.
I love that. I have some skill in that direction. We'd be happy to volunteer it, offer it.
That would be fantastic. Are there any people you can think of who, so I'm just checking here for other people coming in. That's why I'm a little all over the keyboard. It's very weird. Oh yeah, hang on, Chris. But John, are there any specific people who you may want to, just to put you on the spot, to interview?
Well, I would go with a half dozen off the top. I would say Dave Eggers is a very interesting person who interacts with text in a very interesting way as a novelist. I would say Christine Lagarde is someone who has struggled with text as a way of projecting economic, both truth and also trying to avoid upsetting the apple cart with the wrong text. And I think would have very interesting things to say about that. I think there are speechwriters within the political community who would be much more interesting than politicians. I actually think politicians would be dreadful. They're almost more objects and artifacts than they are actual intelligences in this particular case, although Europe is a decent exception to that sometimes.
Well, I think that's exactly the reason we should interview them. It's partly to highlight that.
Well, I think that's good. With the right interview, you can certainly get the idea of an artifact here, a textual artifact. That's what politicians are. I think Ta-Nehisi Coates, as sort of overexposed as he is a very interesting starting point for text and race. I mean, I think the rules about what words you can say and use and can't in the racial discussion in the United States is a huge cultural, it's a cultural dysfunction of communication and language, and it represents I think a limitation of, I mean, you would really have to go back to the discussions of the Iroquois Compact in North America when the Indians or the indigenous people decided to create a democratic republic of their own, and decided that they could not say certain leaders' names because their spirituality demanded that they not be said, that saying them and using them as words and text would be a sacrilege. And that was part of acquiring the shared experience to believe in the political document. So the N-word controversy, I think, is another example of this right now.
Vint, you made it. Good. Sorry, John is just talking about potential people to interview for a second edition as part. So, John, please continue.
Yeah, and so I would just say for another woman, I think, you know, I think actually Elizabeth Warren would be a very good interview as a politician who both sort of understands the academic dimensions of text and also understands how one word can ruin you in a tribal way. And then I think there are hip hop characters who I think move back and forth between text and oral tradition in a very interesting way. I mean, I think you could take anybody from Tribe Called Quest and interview them. They have a good historical perspective. Ice Cube has a good historical perspective and is also a celebrity, and text within the celebrity culture is a bizarre, strange, and interesting place. And I think his interview would stand out as something fascinating as an artifact, even if it was not articulate in the way that we might understand, but he's a smart guy.
I think you're giving yourself a lot of work here because these all sound brilliant. And you're taking me back to the 90s where I was hanging out with Tribe Called Quest in New York City. Those were special times.
Lucky you.
Yeah, that was magical. Chris, I see you still have your hand up, but John, of these wonderful people that you're suggesting, would you like to consider maybe starting with some of them? Maybe we have a meeting as a group to discuss the kind of questions, because one thing that I don't want, and you already know this because you said it well, but I thought I'd highlight it. I don't want too much talk of language. It's really important we focus on text. But what you said about how text and language relates, especially within hip hop and so on, is very interesting.
Well, I think that's certainly worth a meeting. I think there should also be some sort of discussion of a modality of how we would approach these people. I mean, depending on who you're talking to, there are layers of interlocutors and / complete assholes who you would have to deal with to try to get their attention, if you'll excuse me.
It's like trying to get to Tim Berners-Lee sometimes.
Oh God, yes. Good example. Chris, you've been holding your hand up for a while, please.
Sure. So it occurs to me, there's one, doing an interview that gives you opportunity to get some content from one class of people who are really, really important to text and missing from this, which is the illiterate. I'm not sure who would be the ideal person, but to the actual experience of someone who is surrounded by text that they can't interact with must be like asking someone deaf about like how they understand music. Must be quite strange.
Although there are two examples of that. There are people who function quite well without text that are happy about it, as well as people who are diminished and profoundly disabled by not being able to interact with text. So it would be a double hit, I would think.
But this raises a really interesting question. Pruitt and I had a brief interaction, and the question was whether a lot of this work had anything to speak to disability. And as many of you know, for people who are blind, text has to be voiced in order to be consumable. it didn't occur to me until recently that this whole interaction with the author and reader program might be cast in a very different light if you had to ask the question, how do I do this, for someone who can't read, who can't, not that they're illiterate, but they can't see. And I had no idea where that would take us, but the experiencing a document in the way that Freud characterizes, if you can't see it but have to hear it, is pretty fascinating. Because even if you figured out what the various key commands were, what does it mean to voice something which is pulled up from the glossary, for example? Would you want a different voice? Is there a glossary voice? Is there a Google search voice? I don't know the answer to any of these, but it pushes this into a really interesting dimension. And maybe it's the wrong time to try to pursue that, but I think we should at least make a note of the curious exploration of non-visual interaction with text, just to make sure we don't forget that that might be worth our attention.
Before we get to you, Peter, Bent, that kind of multimedia type thing is very interesting. Like with the Apple Watch, if you get a certain kind of message, it gives you a certain kind of sound. It took them a while to do that, but now I already know if it's a like or a new message without even looking at it. So there are clearly opportunities for these different senses to augment each other. Yeah, Peter.
Okay, one thing you might want to look at is Emacs Speak, which was the project to voice enable the Emacs text editor. I think it was TV Raman who developed it.
Yes.
So he might be a very good person to approach. Also, as far as politicians go, if you have anyone who's overtly political on one end of the political spectrum, we have to make sure that we find someone on the other end. Otherwise, the entire book would be cast as being a political polemic, and we don't want to have that happen. So if we had to reach out to someone on the right, I'd suggest trying to find someone who's a strict constructionist of constitutional law. And that might be a good way to find someone rational on the right side who'd be really thinking deeply about text.
I don't want to show my politics too much, but if we go too far to the right, we'll have to find them crayons, right?
Okay, that's off. That's out of there. No way. I think as someone from the media, I would avoid the binary of right and left. If we're going to get into politics, I would completely ignore it. We need to rise above that. I would choose two radicals who, whether they're right, left, or even just profoundly, antisocial. I mean, almost to the point of criminality, to depict text as a weapon or as a political mover and shaker. I would steer clear of the actual ideology and focus on the weaponization factor that radicalism has in politics. The right-left thing, I think, is just going to diminish us and make us look like everybody else.
I'd rather avoid politics altogether if we could.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're both talking to the same thing. We don't want the book to become political. But, what I would like, for instance, here in the UK, Boris, I would like him to say something, even if it's just a little quote, because it shows how this dialogue isn't part of what they're doing. But they will have a very different notion of what political language is. And of course, you talked about the speechwriters and the translators earlier, John. They would really be meaty. I mean, the only criteria for any of this at the root of it is that they have something passionate to say about text. It shouldn't be flavored by other things. Raphael?
Yes, I was thinking on the other end of the spectrum. Vint mentioned something about visual interaction with text, and I was wondering if the universe of doodling would fall along that category. I know Doodle has to do a lot with images, but it has most to do with text and how you use text with some sort of visual to complement information in some way, to enhance understanding. And this author, Sunny Brown, she has a very quick TED Talk of about 6 minutes where she introduces the concept and how it's been used. And I feel like it's completely on the other side of the spectrum related to political and things. But how do you combine text with other things to enhance information and knowledge acquisition? I feel that's quite specific, and it would be quite nice to see text in this area.
Yeah, I completely agree. Unless anyone has any issues, please email me or something, and we'll try to get in touch with that author. Peter Flynn?
Yeah, one thing which did occur to me, and I think I did raise this once before, but I didn't take it any further. There is a very large community of extremely active people who deal with nothing but text all day, every day. And that's the digital humanities researchers.
Mm-hmm.
And they are dealing mostly with old text, and in particular old text encoded in some format that can be reused, like XML, for reproducing editions. But they are intimately concerned with the meaning of text and the way it has developed in the past. And I wondered whether some of them might have a good view on, given their historical perspective, how that could develop in the future. But I'd need to sort of sit down and go through it. I used to be a part of that community many decades ago, but
I expect that to be a fruitful community for us. They've been a little hard to reach. If you have inroads there, please do use them. Peter,
there is the TEI, the Text Encoding Initiative, TEI-L mailing list will reach pretty much all of them.
Okay.
But of course, it's a technical mailing list about how they are dealing with the problems of encoding old documents. So intruding on that thread with something like this would require, I'll talk to a couple of people there about it and see what they think.
Thank you, Peter.
Yeah.
It's Vint. As a response to Peter Flynn's comment, Mike Whitmore, who runs the Folger Shakespeare Library, is an inveterate text analyzer. He did a lot of work at Carnegie Mellon and other places in this space. I just listened to a talk that he gave on this whole subject of analyzing Shakespeare's works. So he would be a very articulate character. I'm happy, I know him well.
If you could reintroduce, because we had a little bit of a dialogue before, and say, hey, volume 2, you need to be part of it. That would be great, Vince. So the thing is, we also need to soon launch this year's student competition. And on Sunday, I may start teaching a course on writing the future of text. Depends on, who signs up for it. So far, demand has been, Valentina, you have to give me a nice PR word here. Okay, it's been a bit weak, but that's the way it is. But in this course, what we're planning to do is every week write a piece on the future of text based on the topic presented beforehand. It can be history, infrastructure, that kind of stuff. And as we do that, we will be writing together a journal to share via PDF. And at the end of it, I've told the students that whatever final essay will go into the book. There is no reason why this book, which will be primarily digital, has to be tiny. So if we open up maybe to university and younger students as 2 separate parts, we could maybe get some interesting younger perspectives as well. And also, even though there was a huge call at the launch of this book for a more varied perspective, the only lady here is Valentina. That's pretty bad. And that is nobody's fault but mine. As I'm supposed to be the editor and spearheading this, we have had some great ladies involved. Esther Dyson and Esther Bocecki, examples from California, are just the most amazing minds. But it is difficult to reach into different communities. We can kind of talk to people we know. So John, with some of the people you mentioned earlier of all kinds of persuasions, I think that's incredibly worthwhile. And whatever else you guys have, yeah, there we go. That would be really, really appreciated.
It's a personal mission of mine to meet more women this year, but that is neither here nor there. Yes, there are a lot of people I can think of, and it's not like, it's our community. It shouldn't have to be some sort of reach into. There are plenty of people who are enthusiastic about this subject, I'm sure.
And did we lose? Oh, no, sorry. My screen just went a bit funny. But, you know, for some of you new guys, just the goal of the book is to have a printed copy that is torn to tatters by some student going through it, underlining and just getting ideas from it. So any thoughts you can put in there that are a bit radical, a bit different, non-obvious from whatever perspective, would be amazing. Tomorrow I'm doing a masterclass on the software for Reading University. And it's a typography department that's very modern, a lot of digital typography and things like that. So they are not only a new avenue for us, but they're also largely Asian, the students. So finally, we have avenues to get more Asian perspectives, which is, of course, what we need as well.
It's Vint. You know, it just occurs to me that this book, or a book anyway, ought to be a demonstration of the power of author, reader, and so on. And right now, that's not the case, I think. So I wonder whether we should consider deliberately using the book as a tool for demonstrating what it means to interact with text in depth.
So that goes on to the third part of today. The first book was manually put together on InDesign using Visual Meta for interactions in Reader. This book, because Esther Dyson, who's been wonderful behind the scenes, she was the one I had to cry in the shoulders about all the spelling issues in the first book. Not only my own, which is only responsibility of myself, but also contribution. So for this second volume, manuscripts have to come to me in Word or Author, because then most of this stuff is automatically done. And we're going to put it into one single author document, export it to PDF using the Visual Meta. Okay. Thank you, Peter. And we are building new interactions for that. One of them, I've told some of you, and one of the things we're doing, and Valentina and I just had a meeting on this, we have this idea for, in Rome and Notion and all these wonderful new tools for thought. One of the problems that comes up, it's too easy to just fill a bucket with stuff. So in the environment that we have glossaries, and that's not a very sexy word. We have to get a better term, but if you are so interested in a term or a piece of text or terminology or a name that you will actually write what it is, that means it is important to you. So that means that already you can do this in Author and export it to Reader. And already in Reader, you can have extra interactions with your glossary. It's kind of advanced and fun. But we're looking at ways where you can think with glossaries by having automatic connections and stuff like that. Now, this is currently single user, but Vince, since you highlighted, you know, we have Monday and Friday discussion, some of us, on this. If we were, okay, one of the things that people keep saying, and is really annoying because they are right, is that it would be great if each article and or each author would tag their work. Mm-hmm. Kind of what it is, kind of who they are, whatever. I don't want to ask famous people, Vint, you bring in a lot of famous people, they're all busy, to do that work. And I also don't want to do it on their behalf because it's a bit arrogant. But now that we have book one as our legitimate piece of we've done it, for book two, we can maybe demand something like that. And then we can start doing very interesting graph type things that are digital native, but can still be stored within the substrate of paper when need be. Sorry, that was a lot of talk. I was just saying, Vint, yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Well, thank you. No, actually, they gave a lot more color to the whole question. So thank you for that.
Yeah, Chris?
So there's something I just wanted to mention quite quickly, but we lost one of the authors from the first book, who is a friend of mine for 30 years, and he died last week. So I was hoping to see him again this summer, and I won't, but that's a guy called John Armstrong, who's studied difficult poetry as his main interest, the kind of poetry that I just stare at, and it's like free jazz in word form, and I do not understand. But lovely guy, but very dour until he realized he was one of those people who pretends to be grumpy and then actually spends his entire life helping people when no one's looking. But I reread his article and went and ate some of his favorite food that day, food that day. It seemed appropriate. And he wrote an article about medieval emblem books and how it related to modern memes and could make them better. But he also talked about the potential of text rather than the future of text, and the fact that a lot of the potential of text may not have been realized. And I thought that that was the thing I wanted to sort of highlight, that you talk about the future of text, Frode, but that's the optimism. And what we're actually interested in is that potential of text. What could text do, not will it do, because what it will actually do is not necessarily everything it could do.
Thank you for mentioning him, Chris. The future is not just optimistic, it is also misinformation and fake news and so on. It does. All I'm saying is that text is crucially important for human civilization. We need to look at what it is and how we can be better and how it might be worse. And, you know, yeah, so I agree with your sentiment, obviously. Thanks. But if we want to, so here's one, okay, there are two frustrations with this project. One of them is that, look at you guys, this is a successful project. There are amazing people in this room. You know, Vint and I have been doing the Future of Text Symposium for 10 years this year. And finally, you know, and it's been a lot of work getting people interested. And very often we get people in and they want to do text plus video because video is more interesting. And it's like, oh God, you've got to talk them back. We don't have to do that with this community. But it also means that, you know, we all need to do more with the marketing and we need to do more with the production. You know, if we're going to do more exciting things, we probably need sponsors. To do the software research, we need money for this. So if anybody has ideas for companies or institutions or people who want to help realize the future of text and how we experiment with it, that would not be a bad thing. There's got to be at some point some research organization that realized that, you know, most of the scientific literature is in the form of text.
Yeah. I had a chance to talk to the head of the Sloan Foundation last week. And Sloan prides itself on underwriting the cost of developing software for scientific purposes. And it dawns on me that an argument made that what you're doing is relevant to that. So what I would suggest, you must have a number of texts that are already available describing what it is done with author and reader and so on and liquid. Why not package that up in a small number of pages, and I will send that to the president of Sloan and let's see whether there's any resonance there.
Yeah, we'd be happy to do that. Thank you.
Does anyone know John Warnock, the founder of Adobe?
John is an old friend, yes.
I mean, you know, he used to have that unbelievable, maybe he still does, that unbelievable collection of books from pre-Gutenberg or right around the Gutenberg time. I mean, it just seemed like his thing was the history of text, ancient text. I don't know what he's doing now. I used to see him at TED all the time.
So I don't know. John had been very active in the Folger Shakespeare Library and funded some of its work. I'm still on the board there. But I haven't seen, in my last couple of exchanges, I haven't gotten the feeling that he's as active as he once was. I'd be happy to pursue that if you think that there's a there.
I just remember his powerful presentations showing those books and his clear, just sort of reverence and affection and passion for text and the objects of text that he collected.
Well, there's another fellow who's a billionaire, Rick Adams, the founder of UUNet, who has probably one of the most magnificent private libraries I've ever seen. It must be a $300 million collection, if it's anything, including Newton's personal library with his annotations in the
wow.
It's just mind-boggling. I don't know whether he would respond to this or not. He's very interested in writing, the history of writing. And of course, he's got samples that go all the way back to whatever 5,000 years ago, cuneiform.
That's crazy.
You know, there's also the Morgan Library in Manhattan, which
that's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you could get him to, if part of the pitch to him would be that you're in a long tradition of this kind of gilded era, billionaires moving to text as a kind of way of curating and celebrating civilization, you know, maybe some events held at the Morgan Library with him present and others that you're talking about, Vint, might yield some serious commitments and possible funding.
Thank you guys for bringing up these wealthy book people. That's, of course, very interesting in many, many ways. I think it's worth also mentioning one thing some of us are doing, which is we're writing now a book called The History of Text. And it's basically just a timeline of anything. It goes back to the beginning of the universe because, you know, a little bit of wide context. And then we try to just cram it full of anything we can, because it is written with visual meta, meaning that when you read it in Reader, if you come across IBM, double click, do Command F, suddenly you can just see all the lines in the document that have IBM in it. It's a very crude interaction, and we can do much more. But these people you're talking about here, who clearly have a deep interest in the history, if they want to contribute time-based items, we'll put it in there. And of course, we can put them in somehow as well. And of course, if they want to support the production of both the book and or the software that makes the book come alive, you know, we would be extremely happy to feature them. Yeah, Peter.
Yeah, that does sound like something which the text encoding people would be able to do. And I think it'd be a good idea if we could find a way of making it available to them for review, because many of them will be working on projects which will fit into it. And just gathering that information on its own would be enormously valuable.
Isn't it? Yeah, thank you, Peter. Isn't it crazy? There is no book called The History of Text. You know, I have a whole massive stack of books here on, you know, like you all do, on books that are about the history of text, but none of them is actually called that. So we quote unquote own that name, and I think we can do a public service by just making it massive. It's already 50 pages of just lists.
Yeah, I mean, just making that the canonical source for the history of text would instantly pique the interest of professors of literature and humanities text worldwide, because it's a place you can go to and say, go and look at that thing there.
I think exactly, Peter. And the reason the way I'm going about making it canonical is getting brilliant people like you involved, because all contributors are credited at the back of the book, and all the contributors give the book credibility. Right? None of the entries have any citations to them. That would just be a mess. Because if a certain thing happened on a certain date, it either did or didn't. It should be really instant to check that. But it should be a great list, especially for students to go through. Yeah, Raphael?
Yeah, I guess John and Vint were mentioning the Morgan Library and Museum, and I was thinking it would be incredible if we could find somebody that studies philology, which is the study of the written word, and bringing back and interpreting and bringing back, you know, analyzing texts from previous times. That would be incredible as well, to connect with the past, but yeah. Philology would be pretty cool.
Yeah, that's also a great category. If you, as I've started doing during these meetings, if you have a suggestion, please do the research and send me the specifics. Otherwise, it gets very, very messy.
I'll try to look for some influential or somebody that seems cool in this area.
Philologists, yes.
We have an entry for Roman graffiti.
Roman graffiti. No, but that's a good idea. Can you please email me that, Peter, and I'll look it up and put it in.
I'll see if I can track something down.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, there was a load of it in Vindolander last year, and another batch from Bath uncovered the year before.
We saw, my wife and I, we saw this documentary on BBC the other day on makeup from the 1700s. And it turns out that the ladies would put fake little moles, like a heart or a moon, but where it was on the face would have semantic meaning. So you could see if someone was out to find a mate, or if they were just playing or whatever. So symbolic communication in many, many fields, I think we should try to populate.
Right.
Isn't that crazy? Today we have text messages with a little tag of a like, and they used to have it on your cheek, right? So.
May I suggest also to look for the Journalistic Foundation in US. I think they have some funds for promoting text and also journalistic work. But I think they have behind the foundation some crazy, incredible people that support the valuation of the journalistic work. But behind that, they have also university to promote the text and also the content. And they have some special fund for initiatives that sustain some new ID. It's I think it's Boston, if I remember, but I can find the right thing. Second point I suggest also is, you know, that there are some application like Substack, or let's say Substack or Patreon, supporting the idea of creator. There's having new tools for helping people to promote not only their let's say their ego, but also mainly their content. It's behind that. It's also mainly some journalists or people that have some opinion. They're going a little bit further than a Medium, but I think there are a new trend now for supporting really good content, but also people that support this idea. And behind that, they have some wall for payment. And for the second book, I suggest perhaps to go to publish part of your book to such blogs, or let's say a workspace or a network, because I think you will bring some connection with people beside the cycle that you have, because there are some people that want to pay to support, but I think that will open your the spectrum of your content to a new kind of people looking for specific sites that promote content. And you know, and the third point I also want to share, you know, the success of Orwelli book is to publish only chapter of their book. And at the end of the book, they publish the paper version. And they make their fortune because of people wants to read and have access to some preliminary documents and information chapter by chapter. And because of the pre-release, they also bring some people that want to be aware of something before the other, and they pay for that. But I think it could be also for you a good way to promote your book or your content by having not only some nice people to promote your vision or to help you to bring a new vision for text, but also to split the job to make people reading time to time some good content, and at the end, because of they have paying, they receive the paper version, because I've seen that you are very let's say needed to have the paper version. But paper is a limit, because digital for me is the new frontier of the new step for the paper, because you bring links and you have no links with the paper except the reference. The reference is too complicated to manage with paper. But I think people would love to have the paper version, because in the end, it's what they have to have in their library.
What you're doing sounds a bit like what you're talking about there sounds a bit like early access games, which is when you pay for a game cheap and it's not actually finished, then they never finish it and you wasted your money. And occasionally you turn out you only paid a fraction of the price of Minecraft, but most of the time it's not.
But it's a new trend, and why not?
Mm-hmm.
That's my point. And also, just to finish, I would suggest also to interview some monk, because those people has a lot of value. Because
you said, interview some
monks.
Monks, okay, not a bad idea.
Because those person is reading a lot, but it's not speaking about too much. But they have something to do with the words, and they manage the word differently. But I think there are some you know, in the past, the monks were really important to pass the, let's say, to transfer the information and some text. But those people has also a vision of the content and the text for the future. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
Sorry.
thank you. Specifically on that community, I would love to have a separate discussion on how to integrate with that community. But when it comes to the serialization of the book, I think what we're trying to do with that website on Circle is partly that, where we've started putting thoughts and discussions so people who join that community get to see things before we write it up. Yeah, let's keep thinking about that.
Okay.
I totally agree with Alan on kind of fragmenting and doing sporadic releases and exploring the book, not just in one big chunk, but in separate pieces. I feel that's a very good way to have constant conversation about the topic. My only question would be related to if, like you mentioned, we choose to monetize it using Substack or any other platform, how would that connection work with people who are contributing to the book? And how would we have the transparency to say where the costs and that the money coming in from Substack is going to be redistributed in either publishing the book, hiring designers and people to do layout and things like that? How would all of that combine together?
I think if we get to the point where that's an issue, we spend the first batch of money on good champagne. The amount of money the book has made so far has been more Coca-Cola level.
Of course.
So the thing is, this is such a niche community. It's really bizarre, even though everybody reads and writes. It's been such a struggle. Vint knows this as well as I do over the years. So just getting people to actually pay attention to text and not just the language in the text. So I'm not worried about making too much money. I think it's more likely that someone will just give us a certain amount of money for either a promotion or helping us develop the software around the book or something like that. So far, everybody contributes for free and I make all the money. It hasn't made back nearly any of the cost, and I'm completely happy with that. I'm very grateful with everyone, but let's not pretend that we're ready to be a commercial venture, I think. It's just not sexy enough, unfortunately. But in terms of giving articles out, yeah, we can keep talking about that. Sorry, yeah, Peter, you can interrupt me now, please.
Okay, I just want to mention I posted a couple of links to ancient graffiti in the chat and also a couple of links to studies on comments in computer source code. So that's like text embedded in code, which is worth addressing.
Thank you. In these last few minutes, just in terms of near possible things we can do with the digital book, already, if you have a citation in the book, in the body of the text, whatever the number is, you click on it, you get a pop-up with a full reference. That's quite useful. We have the glossary system, which is quite useful. Other things we can do is link to documents that you own. So let's say that someone cites the first volume of the book or a volume from ACM, but if it's on your hard drive, if there's a link, you should be able to click to open that. Because right now you have to go to the ACM download page and it's just lots of steps. That means that people don't do it. So there are many opportunities, even though the book will be presented in a quite traditional form, that we can do to really speed up the kind of interactions that are possible. We can already do the reformatting of the book to show only names. We're planning to maybe do that with dates. The history of the book that we're working on started as the appendix from the first book. And of course, the entire history of text will go into the second volume, so that as you're reading and you come across, let's say, Vint Cerf, you select Vint Cerf, you will not only see his name, his article, and everyone referring to him, but also in the timeline for context. So there's a lot of things we can start building on that can make this become a really rich source for people to dig in and navigate around the space. But to do that, we need more people to interview, more people to contribute, and more development.
Quick. No, go ahead, Vint. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Raphael.
It was just a quick question related to the first book. Even though it is published in paper and it is a final product, I'm wondering the possibilities that we can still continue exploring the content in the first book. So if we combine the contents of the first book with a newsletter, we can release a newsletter with a text per week or something like that. Or we can combine it with, a Medium post every week. Just the content is already there. We just have to copy and paste it on Medium to get the conversation going. And
I think there's very interesting points you're bringing up. And my answer to that is yes, absolutely. We need to look at that. It's just here on Monday, Friday meetings. We can keep talking. We can release the documents on the web, or of course we can from the first book, but also just like Whitman's Blades of Grass or whatever it's called, a book of poetry that he just kept updating. There's no reason we can't have volume 1, volume 2, but also combined volume 1 and 2. So it'll be a massive book, but that means that as you do the interactions, you have all the different bits of knowledge together. So we have one that keeps growing, and then we have one that's an annual edition. These are absolutely things we need to look into, decide both in terms of readability and marketing. Yes, thank you. Oh, you're doing a cool little reaction thing there.
Or you could always have a loose leaf edition so that people could bring the relevant chapters to classes if they're using it in university without having to lug the entire book in their backpack and break their backs.
Yeah, that's called printing the current pages of PDF, but yes, that's possible. Not a bad idea.
Well, I mentioned it because in legal publishing, a lot of things where they'll have a massive volume, that'll be a fortune, and they'll have an annual supplement that will be loose leaf pages with instructions on where to remove pages from the previous edition and insert the new loose leaf pages. Of course, all that's falling by the side as more and more is just moving digital. Yes. But that was the original tradition.
That used to be called academic copyright infringement when you'd go to the Xerox room and copy chapters back in the old days.
Yes. Vit, I see you have to go. Have fun with your speech. And yeah, we will all meet again. Well, those who are available in a month, and let's just keep pushing. So thank you, everybody. It was a smaller meeting today, but I think it was very productive. We have further ideas of who to interview, who to include, and how to make the book and funding. So any final questions or comments or anything?
Be part of the community, Circle community.
Yeah, John, are you on there as well? I think you are actually. Didn't you just post something there? Yes, you are. Fantastic. Yes, that's what you're referring to. I'm just being a bit dizzy. All right, guys. For John and Alan, we also meet a lot of us Mondays and Fridays. Feel free to drop by anytime. It's 4 o'clock UK time for an hour. And yeah. And see you in Circle. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Have a good week. Stay safe.
Bye-bye. So long, guys.